Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Cybercriminals Enjoy Chaos, Protecting Data During the COVID-19 Crisis. I'm Jessica Edgerton, EVP of Operations and Corporate Counsel for Leading RE, and I'm very pleased today to introduce our presenter, Chris Sayadian, to give us guidance on protecting our data and our privacy and that of our businesses and our clients during this time when we are leveraging online business tools, virtual technology, and remote communication applications at absolutely unprecedented rates. Chris is the founder and president of Solve My PC, a company specializing in providing customer-focused IT services and support for small to mid-sized businesses. They are a fantastic company. I know this firsthand because we use them at Leading RE. A couple of housekeeping points for us today. This webinar is being recorded and will be available both in Leading RE Access and on our public Vimeo page. The latter we do so that you can share today's information with your clients and prospects, as many of them are also, of course, working remotely these days. If you have questions during today's presentation for Chris, please enter them into the chat box and we'll address as many as possible at the end of today's presentation. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jessica, and good morning, everyone. So basically this presentation, as we go through it, write down any notes you have, any questions, and I'll make sure I answer them as best I can towards the end. And I've given Jessica the ability here to chime in if she sees anything specific or has a question that pops up. Feel free. But essentially, some of the things I want to talk about are kind of the three main pieces to working working remotely, and that could be anywhere. Because some people are working at home, some people have gone away and working either in their second homes or perhaps even with family. The key element, though, is a lot of these fundamentals apply the same, no matter if you're working in the office or if you're working from home. You should be following these practices all the time. So the three items that we're going to talk about are, staying safe, both physically and virtually, and I'll explain what that is, as well as communication. There's so many ways to communicate nowadays. And then, our tech gear, all the devices we're using, whether they're company provided or they're gear that we've bought ourselves. And that could be anywhere from your computer to your tablets, to your phones, and so on and so forth. So staying safe physically and virtually. So obviously we have the essential items that you need when you're working from anywhere. You need your power. You need sufficient internet. You have to have an actual electronic device, right? Your IT device. Is it going to be a computer? Is it going to be a tablet? Everyone's got something that suits them. Of course, now that you're working remotely, there's some things to focus on. You need a place that's quiet. You need a presentable background in case you're doing video conferencing. I think a lot of us have figured out we have to look professional, at least up top, during these webinars. And, a lot of people are thinking about privacy. So privacy aspect is, if you're working, some people I've noticed have been working together, whether it's with their spouse or even they have their quarantine partners. And the idea is whatever is only for your eyes should be only for your eyes on your screen. And that could be both physically and virtually. Because there'll be a time, hopefully once we get past all this, that you may decide, hey, working remote wasn't so bad, and I may work from a coffee shop. Well, things to note are anyone can see your screen. And if privacy on your screen physically, for the people who are around you, there are ways to avoid leaking anything that shouldn't be leaked. One could be don't put it up on your screen. So maybe you shouldn't be doing your tax returns or looking at clients' information, whether you're checking someone's contract, looking over IDs. If it's something that where you really need to be doing it and you feel confident that no one else will see it, you can always get a privacy screen. They're very easy to acquire and install. And those can go right onto your laptop screen. And then there's also the idea of conference calls. people have things that pop up on their screen. So as I even do this conference call, I ensure that all you can see is this PowerPoint deck. That way, in case I get emails, important text messages, chat messages, they don't pop onto the screen. I also don't give the ability to show anything on the screen that I don't want anyone to record, because theoretically, taking a screenshot these days are so easy, and it's not because of malicious intent, it's for the fact of just being so productive. So we really have to be conscious on what we pull up on our screen, both physically and virtually. I know these things sound a little basic, and the reason why I talk about them is we're learning that, yes, a lot of our companies have allowed working remote, but a lot of people have never done it. And so this is becoming the first time they're doing it full time. And they are learning all sorts of new things, as well as crossing all kinds of new challenges. So excuse me for some of the things that may sound basic, but I think a lot of us are learning it's a little tough. And I wanted to talk about what we use when we are working remotely outside the office. Let's start with Wi-Fi. I put a little picture here that's blurring out of these are all the Wi-Fi networks, and that's just half the list from where I work from. And you'll notice there's locks on Wi-Fi's, there's Wi-Fi that have no locks on them. And I think the message I wanted to drive here was ensure you're connecting to the right Wi-Fi network and that it's trusted. So if I'm at Starbucks, I want to connect to Starbucks. I don't want to connect to whatever's free just to get onto the internet. And you may say, why is that a problem? I just need to get to the internet. I want to check my email. Well, you are entering into the network where you don't know whose house it is. Would you go into someone else's house and start using their kitchen? They could have cameras everywhere. They could be recording you. They could be monitoring you. So if I join onto someone else's network, you've already done the work of them breaking in. They're there now. Now they can just scan and sniff all the packets and data that you browse around. So in those moments where you're saying, you know what, I'm always on the go, I don't want to think about connecting to finding the right Wi-Fi network. Hotspots are so easy to obtain now. They're built into our phones almost. Almost all of us have them. And if you don't, it's one of those items where a lot of these carriers would love to throw in, almost practically free, if not really cheap. So I would definitely leverage a hotspot if you're one who's bouncing around, doing business from your car sometimes when you're parked, waiting for a client to show up for a showing, or you need to pop into a random cafe that you've never been to, so on and so forth. Even if you're using someone else's office, you really don't know their IT practices and what they need to observe and monitor on the network. The other item is printers and copiers. We start to realize, all of us have these multi-function printers that can scan, can copy. To a certain extent, some of those actually save data on them. So be mindful of that when you're scanning contracts, scanning IDs, scanning passports, scanning anything that's sensitive or personal. When it comes time to actually recycle that printer or throw it away, it'd be best to check the manufacturer's specifications on how to wipe it so that it's clean, or give it to a company that will do that for you. Sometimes we don't have a printer or a copier, and we're in one of those cafes and you'll see that communal printer. Keep that in mind before using it. How important is it? I would I'd feel more comfortable going to a UPS or a FedEx where they're in this business and they have protocols in place that when it comes time to recycle their device or to trade it up, that they are going to clean and wipe it. And the last piece I wanted to talk about was using VPN. This term is being thrown around all over the place more than ever now, and has been. Some companies use them, some companies don't. But before talking about it, I want to explain what it is, but in English, and very simply. Basically, when we're out and working remotely, we're using our network, we're out on the internet, and maybe I need to connect to the office because Maybe our office has a share drive or a server or a file server or some sort of resource within the office that when I'm there, I can access this resource through the network, but I'm at home. Obviously, the office can't have those resources just exposed out onto the internet so that anyone can go into it. Think of it as the office as a tool shed or a garage. And they're not going to leave, you're not going to leave your garage or your tool shed just wide open for you to walk in. What do you need? You need either the right transponder to open the garage door or the right key to unlock the door. So that's essentially what VPN is doing. It's creating a tunnel. So it's basically a door to this tunnel that leads you into your office. And you can then utilize any of the services within the office. Maybe you need to print something by your assistant's desk, or you need to access a shared drive. So that's what makes the connection private and secure versus just going through publicly to an open door. I think it's pretty common sense about that. But some things to note, there's a tip about it. When you're not doing business-related activities, I wouldn't be on the VPN. The reason being is that you're exposing, because now you've opened the door from your office to your main office. So from your home to your main office, you've opened the door, and anything you do it can theoretically flow through traffic into that office. So if you accidentally click on the wrong thing or contract some sort of malicious malware, etc., it could go into the office. But brokers, managers, head accountants, I hope you're listening, because some of you have more privileges when working with files and folders when you're at the office. So because you have more privileges, you essentially have a bigger key. So if a virus or a malware got into your computer and knows its way through all network connections, and you have your VPN enabled, it's going to go there and could possibly cause problems. And then for the rest of us, if you're not using it, just shut it off, because you're actually doing a disservice to all your other colleagues. You're using up some of the bandwidth at work. So your office internet says, oh, Colleen wants to connect. John wants to connect. I'm going to carve out a little piece of internet for them and make sure that they can get what they need. But if you're not using it, traffic is you're still taking up some of the resources. So I would recommend, if you're not using it, don't use it. You lower risk and you speed up things, not only for yourself, but those at the office. More than ever, we're talking about data, how we access it, how we upload it, how we collaborate on it. So first and foremost, if you have services provided to you, whether it's from the company or you're a contractor and you have your own gear, use what's proven and what's already in place. Don't stray away. I say this because I was talking to a broker the other day, and he says a lot of his clients, when he calls them and he says, hey, I need this or I need that, when you get a chance to do it, their lives, the client's life might be so busy that they just look to just email you directly right from their phone right at that moment, or they even text you, not caring how sensitive the information is. And we have to advocate and lead to let them know what the best practices are and keep those standards. So it'd be wise that you guys also follow the same practices. We can't control everyone's device. The company, when providing devices, let's say company A is providing laptops, they do their best to protect those laptops. They also give abilities for users to use their own devices so that productivity doesn't go to a halt if anything happens to that device. It also gives flexibility. But it's hard to manage all those devices and make sure everyone's adhering to security. One of the quotes I have from Mimecast, which is a very big, large email security company. They did a survey. And from one of their surveys and findings, 90% of leaks and compromises are human error. So we could make networks like Fort Knox and secure them up. All that'll do is slow down workflow, but then the end user still has a key. So if you give your key away to Fort Knox, someone's going to get in. So here I'm highlighting the three main places So within an office, if your company offers VPN, great. If they offer a different tool, even better, as long as it's been proven and it's in place and it's a standard. Same within the cloud. When you're using OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc., just make sure you're going to the right place. Some of you may have the app installed, which is perfect. Make sure that app is always up to date. Sometimes people don't want to keep the apps up to date because they say, oh, it might change, it might be hard to use. However, not only are they making user experience fixes, they're also making security fixes or bug fixes. So it's very important that you have the latest up-to-date apps. So when I say make sure you know where you go, a lot of people will use these file sharing collaboration applications and providers by going to the website. They may go to Google Drive or drive.google.com, or they might go to Microsoft.com, which brings me to talking about HTTPS. And I say there on number 2, the last line item, look for the HTTPS in the URL. What that means is the website is quote unquote secured. And what that means is the owner of the website went through the efforts to purchase a SSL certificate. And what that tells you is that as a attendee to the website in your browser, it says, is this really, for instance, I'm showing an example, solvemypc.com, and you can see how there's a lock. This is usually up in the address bar. That lock means we went through the effort to proving to the SSL authorities out there in the internet, which govern website certificates, to say, we own this website. We'd like to place the seal there. So when our visitors come and they see Solve My PC in the address bar, they know they're here. They know they're on our website. Versus someone masking their website to look like Solve My PC, the lock will never be there. And thanks to a lot of the search engine providers like Google, Bing, Yahoo, they're kind of making it a requirement that websites have this. If they don't, their rankings sort of fall when being searched for. So I think that's a good incentive for company owners, especially companies that offer file sharing, video collaboration, to always have this. So all of them do. Zoom, GoToWebinar, Microsoft, Gmail, what have you, they have it. Which takes me on to communication. Now, this is where the COVID scare comes into play. Because one, like I said, we have a lot of users working remotely, maybe their first time, maybe still getting in the groove. They're trying to decipher what's important in their email and all the other forms of communication. So whether it's from work, from family, or just trying to keep up with the current events. I kind of saw this little tweet as well as took a screenshot of one of my personal inboxes, how many emails we get about COVID-19. Every company has told us their plans, which is phenomenal. Communication is key. But through this, we have this craving to look at every single email and take it seriously. And it's connected with emotion because we want to stay safe. So we may do things that are not proper. So for instance, when we talk about work, we need to make sure the person who's emailing and communicating with us is that person indeed, which I will go through a little later. Friends and family, also the same thing. They may ask for an action. Oh, could you get me a gift card? I really need to go get groceries. Can't wait. And things of that nature, which gets us pumped up to do a call to action of some sort. And I always say it doesn't hurt to call those people. Anytime someone's asking for something, even if it's an emergency, I think they would have called before emailing. And then the current events. So all these because COVID-19 is all over the place, and we're all working remotely, and it's not as easy to walk up to the IT help desk person or to ask someone, we kind of are on our own. So, and that's not the truth. So you're not on your own, and make sure you ask someone or question every single thing that comes through, because it may or it may not be real. So some of the risks that come along with the communication that I want to talk about is security awareness, phishing, ransomware, and CEO fraud, which I kind of go through here briefly, and I don't want to bore through it. And I'm going to go through some of my other slides, and I'll point out which applies to which. The only one that I'd like to talk about is security awareness. And those of you who are running your own businesses and maybe are working with colleagues within it or have employees or teams, it's prudent to have some sort of educational security awareness annually, and especially for the new onboardings. Any new employees that join the team, they should also go through some sort of security awareness so they can understand the threats out there, what the typical processes are, especially in accounting. I think we all get a little nervous if I was an accountant and the CFO messages me and says, hey, are you by your desk? I need something. It's quick. So they should understand the actual company standards and policies. I have seen it where people have dispersed thousands of dollars because they accidentally thought it was someone else, the person that was actually requesting it. And it's hard to regain those funds that are lost. So phishing, what it is it's a means for someone to come and ask for information. They're exploiting you, and they're doing it in a way to understand more about you or what's important. They may even put a little urgency on it. So I showed an email here. It's an email I got. It was pretending to be from Microsoft, and it says your billing statement's ready, sign in. Also had some other content there that made it seem that it was very urgent. You don't need to click on things so fast. You could hover your mouse over items, especially URLs. I was just hovering over the URL there where it says sign in, and you'll notice on the bottom left of that screenshot was a large blurb of text, and it tells me the URL it's going to. Nowhere in that URL did it have Microsoft.com. So already I'm suspicious. And once I'm suspicious, I'm going to ask someone if this is real. Whether I'm going to go directly to Microsoft myself, going to Google, go to Microsoft.com, make sure I'm at the right place, look at that SSL certificate on the top left of the address bar, call them, say, hey, do you really need something from me? Is this real? Or if you're fortunate and you have an IT team on staff or you're outsourcing it or what have you, to ask them, is this real? To them, these are the best tickets because they're easy to answer. They can decipher it. And they know they kept you safe, and they may have even educated you, which is even more great. So the phishing attempts, you will notice how they're urgent. And it could be a CEO, a fake CEO, someone pretending to be your CEO. So in this case, I wanted to explain a couple things when you get an email. A couple vocabulary items. You have display names, you have email addresses, and there's other aspects to the email, which we may not go into in this presentation because it gets a little in depth. But the two main ones are the display name. So in this actual slide here, you'll notice how I have Office 365 right here. And what that is saying is that's the display name. That's where my name would be if I emailed you. It would say Christopher Sayaghian there. To the right of it is the email address. I know there is no such thing as msupdate.net. It should say Microsoft.com. If I don't know it, you might say, how does anyone else know that? You can literally Google this email address and it will tell you that it's fake. It won't take you to Microsoft.com. And Microsoft.com, for instance, we're using them as an example because they're the juggernaut in the industry. They will tell you on their website where they send emails from. They will say, we send emails from these email addresses, and that's it, period. And again, if you don't trust it, you just call in. That's the best thing to do. So that was one thing that I wanted to make sure about. Communication. Oh, let's erase those drawings. So regarding the communication aspect, how do we communicate? There's a million ways now to communicate with each other. As you know, you're getting phone calls, you get emails, you get video conference calls, you get text, so on and so forth. One, I want to talk about keeping sanity is within your team, it's very good to set some sort of standards. This is going to be difficult for the big companies because everybody starts to do what they want to do. And you then start having all sorts of things happening at one time, and you may lose sight of it, which then can lead to a security risk because you're in a rush, because you think you're dealing with a fire, because you have 3 emails that just came in from important people. You have a client that's texting you. You're getting a phone call about your child's school. So I don't want to get into organizing your time and prioritizing things. We're all adults, and I'm sure we can work on that over time and learn. But one thing I wanted to point out, I had an example about texting. People say, how is this being exploited lately? And I have an example of a client, real estate company, and they had 2 new hires in the finance department. One of the hires is only been a month in and got a text message from someone saying that they're the CEO, and they actually use the CEO's name of the current job that person's in. And they've only been there for a month. And that employee actually saved that number as the CEO. Didn't know better to double check until the CEO asked for gift cards. Thankfully, this fraudulent person asked for something that's a little bizarre. And they said, well, how do they get their cell phone? How do they know who the CEO is? They're getting smarter. So this employee, given that they just got a job, had their LinkedIn profile, having their resume in it. And so there was the personal phone number, there's the personal email address. And also, what do we update once we get a new job when we enter into LinkedIn? We update who we work for. And if I click on who we work for, I know all the key employees, executives, leadership team. So you've made it very clear and very easy for me to exploit you. And odds are, if you've been working for a month and we're not practicing security awareness regularly, it's very threatening. And that's a person in the finance department. They have a lot of access. They're good people. They just may get caught off guard. So we need to educate. So this was more about, messaging between your colleagues and your employees and your clients and et cetera. We have to set the standard. And if there is no standard, create one and set the expectations. If your client emails you or texts you and it's not proper, make sure you let them know, delete it, and make sure it's deleted. Nowadays, everything gets backed up. So if I send something very important to a friend of mine and it's just a text message and it has a contract in there or a picture, I know their phone, there's a high chance that it's getting backed up. I really don't know how locked down they have their phone. So there's a lot of unknowns, and that's why we want to make sure we use each system in a way to understand what's critical, what's essential, what's non-essential. Some of the words we're hearing a lot now every day. And if you're one who needs to email, make sure it's encrypted. But remember, once that email gets to your recipient, you really don't have control over it anymore, what they do with it. So that's why I say leveraging secure systems comes in really handy. A good example is one of our tax clients, accounting firms. They're a big, full-blown accounting firm, and they do a lot of tax filings, and they do all sorts of financials. The way you upload your documents are to a secure system, and vice versa. When you need to download the documents, you need to go through a login system and make sure it validates that who you are. Then you can download the files. It's not a simple, hey CPA, can you email me my tax returns and what I need to do? That won't happen and shouldn't happen. So advocate to your clients. It's super, super important. Our tech gear. So some of us have company provided computers. That's phenomenal. I hope IT is doing the right methodology of how they keep everything secure. And then for our independent contractors who are buying our own devices, who are using our own email systems, there are some really simple things we can enforce. One is you may hear the phrase MFA or 2FA. What that means is multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. That's when you go to a website and you log in and then it prompts you to say, hey, I'd like to email you a unique code to your personal email that you have on file, or to your cell phone that you have on file, or we'll call you. But basically, it's a second means of verifying who you are. They do that in case you ever lose your password somewhere and someone figures it out, that second locked door hopefully stops them, and hopefully then alerts you via email that, hey, there's some unusual activity, go check it out. When that unusual activity email comes in, remember, be vigilant and really observe it to make sure it is who it is. We have, for our security awareness programs, like to do some testing where we'll purposely phish our clients. And of course, our clients know, lead executives, they know. And we will do phishing attempts. And it's unfortunate that one of the key statistics we're finding out through our findings is 1 out of 4 people will click and do some sort of action, no matter how petty the email is. This is a funny one, and I will share it. One of our clients showed a picture of a fridge in the kitchen. And what we said is, due to people's food being tampered with and sometimes taken, or we're losing track of it, we installed a camera in the fridge. And if you'd like to see the camera live, please enter in your computer credentials. And believe it or not, 25% of the staff did it. Even IT developers were doing it, just because they're curious. So be very careful, again, when you receive emails. And I wanted to talk about passwords. So passwords, yes, we have millions of them. And it's important that we don't use the same password everywhere, because we have the same username a lot, used a lot and everywhere. So if my email address and password is the same across multiple websites, all it takes is for one of those websites to have a problem. Then you're exposed. So using a verified or really good password manager might be something for you to do. I would recommend using one of the name brands out there, some of the big ones. And if you would like to know some of those, feel free to ask at the end or email. And then going and changing them regularly. I think 90 days is a good time to change them. Some people hate that. Some people want sooner. I wouldn't go past 90 days. Change your passwords regularly, especially for the important things. And then the typical things we can do on our devices. Make sure they're locked. It's getting easier to encrypt them. Sometimes just opening them out of the box. Some of the questions of these laptops are, do you want to encrypt this? Put in this information and we'll do it for you. Making sure they're up to date, always running updates, and making sure the antivirus you use is installed and up to date. One of the pros that have come out, or one of the fortunate things about some of these security companies, are they're offering free antivirus for their paid versions, given the time that we're in right now. So it doesn't hurt to take advantage of that. There are quite a few out there. So I wanted to conclude, and that's all I had. I didn't want to get too boring and have too much overload, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Chris. So you've had everyone riveted. We've had some requests. Oh, let's see here. We've got one. Hold on just a second. What do you think of password keeper sites and apps?
Yeah, I like them as long as they're the reputable ones. Some of the reputable ones could be, from my experience, LogMeIn has something called LastPass. I like that, but you have to be very good with it. Meaning, if you store secure items into it, make sure the multi-factor authentication is on, to where when you log in, it asks for second verification. But note, they are so determined to keep that secure that if you ever forget your way how to log back into that system, customer service, the president of the company, no one cares. They will wipe your account clean and dry. So you have to be very good at maintaining the password to that main account and keeping it secure.
Fantastic. And there have been instances in the past where we've read about those companies themselves getting breached. What do you say to that potential danger or perceived danger?
Yeah, so the key thing is to always have backups. So one of the most threatening things are ransomware, which was one of the topics. And ransomware, what it is once getting infected, it goes through your system and locks every file with a military grade encryption. And if you have access to any network drives, aka over the VPN, to anything you have permission to use or write on, so those will all get encrypted. And so you don't really want to deal with the person or the entity that is holding the ransom, because there's only an 80% chance from statistics showing that you get your data back. So the key thing is to rid the issue and then resort to backups. But backups are key for all of us. You want it to be something that's automated and secure, not something where I have a flash drive, because now you have one more piece of device to look after that can easily be lost. And I'm sure people need to take an effect. If you're going to use a little device, you have to treat that just like your computer. So that little USB flash drive also needs to be encrypted. It also needs to be accounted for. So I rather use something that's online, proven, secure, and automated.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. So another question. What about Alexa listening in during important business calls? I say as my Alexa on my desk literally lights up as I'm talking.
Yeah, and we've been seeing this more often, especially with other devices like Siri, the Google Home. I think first and foremost, people really need to read the directions that come with these devices. And I say that because there is a whole load of information just revolving around the privacy. The goal of Alexa is to learn everything about you, so that, as you know, when you start surfing through Amazon, everything you love to buy shows up, and it starts catering the ads. The ads are targeted more towards you. There's a lot of ways to disable those features, and they're there. And some features may just be ingrained in stone. And I think you really need to think to yourself and say, do I want this device on all the time? And it may be the case where when you're doing these high profile meetings, and Alexa should not be listening to you because you like having those privacy settings either enabled or disabled, is to just turn off the device. Nothing beats doing that. The basics.
Great. Another question. I leave a lot of windows open and I leave my laptop on sleep mode. Is that safe?
So sleep mode, regarding safety, I would say there's a limitation to it. So what I mean by that is, when you leave your computer on asleep, when you open up your computer, does it immediately just let you log in? Do you have a password? Are you more secure if your computer had a encryption on it? So we have some companies that are instilling encryption on laptops for their employees, and they will disable the sleep option. The reason why they do that is so that if you need to step away from your computer, you either have to put it in hibernate or shut it off. Hibernate is like sleep, except it takes the device completely out, almost to an off state, except it saves your entire session, so that when it wakes up, it leaves off where you left off. The reason why they do that is because they have added logins before you get into your main login screen where you're used to. So there is a level of risk, especially if you have no password. So if you just wake your computer up and it just goes right back into working without a password, I would say at minimum have a password there. And then if your device allows for it when encrypting, I rather put the computer into a hibernate or shut it off. And I didn't mention it, but I do notice this sometimes in cafes. People will use the washroom and they'll ask someone to watch their stuff. I love it. I do love, and I want to trust people around us, but you are sometimes holding the key to your clients, and I don't know if they would be comfortable with it. So I know it stinks to put the laptop back in your bag to go use the washroom, but that's what I would do.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Somebody's asking for any particular recommendations on password managers. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I like LastPass by LogMeIn. I think that would be my first place to go, because they're very serious. I've tried myself with clients to regain passwords to access those systems, proving everything: birth certificate, passport. They will not give you a way back into your passwords, which I love. I know that's kind of tough love, but that's how we keep things secure. No exceptions.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate all of this good information, new and reminders here today, Chris. If anyone does in the audience think of additional questions for Chris, please let me know. My email is jedgerton@leadingre.com. I will pass them on to Chris. If we get a lot of questions, we may actually revisit some of those questions via an additional webinar. Oh, let's see. Somebody else is writing here. Thoughts on utilizing YubiKey or Titan keys?
Yeah, and so keys are actually another good way of multi-factor authenticating. So, for instance, some of the big providers are doing it in a way where you either get so when you log into a system, this key will either have a numeral digit code on there to allow you to have that second level of access. And some companies like Google take it another level forward, where if you wanted to access email on your device, you need to have that USB key plugged in. Otherwise, it will not work. If you can make your life work with that, I applaud you, and that is great, because that makes security just one level better, because you need that physical device. But you have to be cognizant of when you lose or misplace that device and request a new one. And sometimes that could be, there's an expense to it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minimal in my eyes. So if you're comfortable using those keys, that's great. Just make sure it's a reputable source.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you again, Chris. Again, if you do have additional questions, we will collect them and can resend them out. Really appreciate all of your attendance. Be aware that there's a whole host of webinars that we are putting out. We're going heavy on webinars during this shelter-in-place time that we're all experiencing. Please keep an eye out for new ones coming up and ones that are already on the schedule via Access. Chris, thank you again for your time. Everyone, please stay safe, stay well, and we will hopefully see you again soon. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.